by bringing us to himself through Christ Jesus. I'm going to give you 3 points and then I'm going to take my seat. This is what the Bible says, that God made a decision in advance to adopt us into his own family. So Paul wanted these Christians to know, hey, listen, the fact that you are a part of God's family, it is not an accident. God had to make a decision. Yeah, and the thing about decision is, it is extremely important that anybody that you are dealing with has actually decided to deal with you. Never allow somebody to allow you to be a part of something without them making a true decision for you to be there. I've always asked some people, hey, when did you guys start going out? I don't know who this is for. And they said, I don't know the actual date we started going out. We just kind of felt into it. No, fam. I need to know, when did you actually decided that I had to be a part of your life, because that is the day that I can actually hold you accountable for how you treat me. Yeah. And so when the text says that God decided, you have to understand that God sat down and he made a decision. You have to understand there are 3 things that you need to know about a decision. Number 1, in order for you to make a decision correctly, you need to know your choices. Yeah. In order for you to make a decision correctly, number 1, you need to know your choices. If you're going to choose the job, if you're going to decide between a job, you need to know the choices that you have, because sometimes a lot of us are living on a lower level simply because we don't know the choices or the options that we have. And it's not just limited to the jobs that we have. Some of us are with people. Some of us are with people that we would not be with if we actually knew the choices that we have. And so now when you think about God, understand the choices. God is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. That means that there is nobody in existence that God did not know. And so that means that when God sat down, he analyzed all the billions and billions of possible people who are going to come into the world. And so when he analyzed the billions and billions of possible people who are going to come into the world, he sat down and said, you know what? I'm going to choose Elins. That's me. I'm going to choose Elins and make him a part of my family. And so when I understand that, I know that my existence here in a part of this church is not by accident. I know that my placement here in being a part of this church is not by accident. And so now when somebody tries to make me feel bad or talk bad about me to try to get me out of my place, I need to tell them, hey, listen, you did not put me in this seat. God did. And so I'm going to outlive the lie. I'm going to outlive the bad talk. I'm going to outlive the rumor. I'm going to outlive the gossip, because God had choices and he chose me. God decided in advance. And so he weighed the options. He says, you know what? I'm going to choose Elins. The second part of making a good decision is you need to know the components. And so that means, I'm just using myself as an example. And so that means that when God chose me, he said, now that I have chosen Elins, I need to understand the different components of Elins, because not every day is Sunday. And Elins might sound really holy holding a microphone on a Sunday, but Elins also has some Saturday nights. Yeah. Elins also has some Saturday nights. He also has some Friday nights. I know he does Wednesday in Bible study, but there's some days that he wants to do Netflix and we got to be honest in church. So, and the reason why we have to be honest in church is because we have to understand there's some parts of us that we don't want other people to know that is already fully exposed to God. And so what happens is oftentimes it's difficult. Can I talk about men for a second? It's hard for us as men to make genuine friendships because we are not acclimated to being genuine with people. As a man, we are really celebrated for the things that we are able to accomplish and or acquire. And so it's very hard for us now to come and be vulnerable with our weaknesses, because when we are vulnerable for our weaknesses, we tend to think that people are going to use those weaknesses as marks to knock us down from our accomplishments and or the things that we acquire. And so now it's hard for me to be honest about some of the things that I go through. It's hard for me to be honest about some of the things that I experience. It's hard for me to be honest about the things that I think about as a married man. And so now when I don't have that safe space, I'm now trapped in the mind of my own thoughts. And so now it's difficult for me to actually trust people, because I know that with the things that I struggle with, if other people struggled with them, I don't think that I would want to be around those individuals. And so now as men, we walk around. I'm just talking about us because that's what I know. As men, we walk around and we struggle. We're trying to find people that we can actually trust. And so now when Jesus is introduced to us, we come with that same mindset, well, because we think that every other man that I surrounded myself with, if I were to be vulnerable with them, they would reject me. And so now when Jesus is presented, we can't help but think, because he is a man as well, he might reject me because of my weaknesses. But the thing that we have to understand is, because God is an all-knowing, all-seeing God, God already understands the components that make you you. So that when he was choosing, he saw all your strengths and he celebrated. But when he was choosing, he knew your weaknesses and he celebrated. That's why the Bible says that in my God is made strong in my weaknesses. And so now when I understand it, I get a little bit more confidence. Not that I'm proud of my weaknesses. I'm confident because my weaknesses make me who I am. And that is the person who God chose, because he understands the different components of me. So the Bible said that God decided in advance. He knew his choices. He selected me. Then when he looked at me, he understood my components, my strengths, and my weaknesses. But then the third part about making a great decision is you have to understand the consequences. He had to understand the consequences. God had to know that when I put my hands on Elins, when I put a microphone in his hand, there is a possibility that instead of him lifting me up, instead of him blessing my name, there's a possibility he might carry the label of Christian but not act like one. And so when God was selecting, God had to understand that choosing Elins is a risk in and of itself. Because there is consequences to interacting with people like me. There's consequences, because the Bible says in John chapter number 1 that he came to his own and his own received him not. He didn't come to the outside world. It's the people who were supposed to know him, and they received him not. And so there are consequences now that have to be weighed into the equation when you're going to try to choose properly, because not every choice has the 100% guarantee that it's going to work out. And so God had to stand back and say, you know what? I know that there is a possibility that Elins might not come through for me. I know that there's a possibility that Elins might drop the ball. I know that there's a possibility that somebody's going to come to church one Sunday and he's going to be standing up on that stage, and they're going to need to hear me. They're going to need to hear my gospel and not just his good jargon. And so there's a risk there. There's a consequence. But the thing about it is, what I love about the text is that Paul said that God decided in advance, watch this, not just to make me a better person, but to make me family. Yeah. He said, follow me. He said that God decided in advance to adopt us into the family. So I began to understand something that I had misunderstood about the character of God. I thought that God empowers us to be better people. And he does. But that's not the main purpose. God doesn't save us simply so that we can be better versions of ourselves. But he can. God does not empower us. God does not save us simply so that we can get better promotions. And he will. But God, when he made a decision, he says, I want to make Elins family. I want to adopt him into my family. When somebody is family, there's something you have to understand about that. Somebody is family not because of what they can do. Somebody is family. I love my family not because of what they can do. I love my family simply because of who they are. And so the text then says that God, now he adopts us and he makes us into family. And so the reason why family is important is because if I just saved you so that you can be better, when you are under attack, it's not my responsibility. If I just save you so that you can be a better version, when something is going against you, it's not my responsibility, because I can stand on the outside and say that my job here is done. He has more money. He has a better house. He has a promotion. My job here is done. That's not how the God that we serve operates. He said it's not really about those things. I want to make you family so that when you are under attack, because when they attack a family member, it's not only the family member they attack me also. That's the reason why I walk around a little different. It's not that I'm conceited, I'm just convinced. It's not that I'm bougie, it's that I actually know who I am and whose I am. So now when I walk around, I don't walk around like I'm just anybody. I'm not saying that I'm better than you. I just know who my daddy is. And because I know who my dad is, I walk around and say, you know what? The weapons may form, but it will not prosper, because I know who my daddy is. I walk around and say, I'm the head and not the tail, because I know who my daddy is. I walk around and say, I'm a lender, not a borrower, because I know who my daddy is. I'm adopted into the family. And so now I understand how God's grace operates. Because when you're on the outside looking in and you are an orphan child, you realize that the people who are coming to adopt you, they're coming to adopt you not knowing if you can do anything for them. And so they simply come in and they see you, and their heart has a compassion for you. And they say, I'm going to choose you, knowing that they made a choice, knowing the components that you come with, knowing the consequences. And they still decide to choose you, and not just choose you and give you money, but they choose you to make you family. And so now the grace of God lies in the fact that while I was alone, while I was by myself, while I was on the outside, that God chose me.